Oh, yeah.
And now, our feature presentation.
It is a great honor and extreme pleasure to obtain the opportunity to repeat, say, and produce the same words, word for word, that exist in Message to the Black Man, the healing message for the black man and black woman of America, by our leader, teacher, and guide, the most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And now, Message to the Black Man. This, in Message to the Black Man, the healing message for the black man and black woman of America, by our leader, teacher, and guide, the most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And now, Message to the Black Man. Allah is God. Who is that mystery God? Part 1. For thousands of years, the people who did not have the knowledge of the person or reality of God worship their own ideas of God. He has been made like many things other than what he really is. The Christians refer to God as a mystery and a spirit and divide him into thirds. One part they call the Father, another part the Son, and the third part they call the Holy Ghost, which makes the three one. This is contrary to both nature and mathematics. The law of mathematics will not allow us to put three into one. Our nature rebels against such a belief of God being a mystery, and yet the Father of a Son and a Holy Ghost without a wife or without being something in reality. We wonder, how can the Son be human and the Father a mystery, unknown, or a spirit? Who is this Holy Ghost that is classified as being the equal of the Father and the Son? The Christians do not believe in God as being a human being, yet they believe in him as being the Father of all human beings. They also refer to God as he, him, man, king, and the ruler. They teach that God sees, hears, talks, walks, stands, sits, rides, and flies, that he grieves or sorrows, and that he is interested in the affairs of human beings. They also teach that once upon a time he made the first man like himself, in the image and likeness of himself, but yet they believe that he himself is not a man or human. They preach and prophesy of his coming, and that he will be seen on the judgment day, but is not man. They cannot tell us what he looks like, yet man is made like him and in the image of God, and yet they still say that he is a mystery, unknown. How can one teach the people to know God if he himself does not know God? If you try teaching the Christians that God is also a human being, they will say that you are crazy, that you do not believe in God, and that you are an infidel. In the meantime, while they admit that he is a mystery God unknown, they teach not to make any likeness to him, yet they adorn their walls and churches with pictures, images, and statues like human beings. Can God be a mystery God and yet send prophets to represent himself? Have the prophets been representing a God that is not known, mystery? They tell us that they heard God's voice speaking to them in their own language. Can a spirit speak a language while being an immaterial something? If God is not material, what pleasure would he get out of material beings and the material universe? What is the basis of spirit? Is the spirit independent of material? Actually, who is that mystery God? We should take time and study what has and is being taught to us. Study the Word and examine it, and if it be the truth, lay hold to it. To teach people that God is a mystery God is to teach them that God is unknown. There is no truth in such teaching. Can one teach that which he himself does not know? If one teaches a thing that he himself does not know, he can be charged with lying to the people. The word mystery, according to the English dictionaries, is something that has not been or cannot be, something beyond human comprehension. The unintelligent, or rather ones without divine knowledge, seem to delight themselves in representing the God as something mysterious, unknown. Such teaching, a mystery God, that God is a mystery, makes the prophets' teachings of God all false. There should be a law made and enforced upon such teachers until they have been removed from the public. According to Allah, the origin of such teachings as the mystery God is from the devils. It was taught to them by their father Yaqub 6,000 years ago. They know today that God is not a mystery, but will not teach it. He, devil, the god of evil, was made to rule the nations of earth for 6,000 years, and naturally he would not teach obedience to a god other than himself. So, a knowledge of the true God of righteousness was not represented by the devils. The true God was not to be made manifest to the people until the god of evil, devil, has finished or lived out his time, which was allowed to deceive the nations. Read Thessalonians 2, 9, 10, Revelation 23, 8, 10.
The shutting up and loosening of the devil mentioned in Revelation 27 could refer to the time between the A.D. 570-1555, which is nearly 1,000 years that they and Christianity were bottled up in Europe by the spread of Islam by Muhammad. May the peace of Allah be upon him and his successors. Their being loosed to deceive the nations of the earth would refer to the time A.D. 1555 to 1955, when they, John Hawkins, deceived our fathers and brought them into slavery in America and were loose, free to travel over the earth and deceive the people. Now their freedom is being interfered with by the order and power of the God of righteousness through the nation of righteousness. For the past 6,000 years, the prophets have been predicting the coming of God, who would be just and righteous. This righteous God will appear at the end of the world of the white race. Today, the God of truth and righteousness is making himself manifest, that he is not any more a mystery unknown, but is known and can be seen and heard the earth over. This teaching of a mystery God enslaves the minds of the ignorant. My poor people are the victims of every robber. They are so pitifully blind, deaf, and dumb that it hurts. But I am going to prove to them that I am with Allah, God, and that Allah is with me, in spite of their ignorance of Allah and myself, whom he has sent. For I am not self-sent, and the world shall soon know who it is that has sent me.
Allah, God, loves us, the so-called Negroes, tribe of Shabazz, so that he will give lives for our sake today. Fear not, you are no more forsaken. God is in person, and stop looking for a dead Jesus for help, but pray to him whom Jesus prophesied would come after him, he who is alive and not a spook. Do you hate me because I represent Allah, the living God, your Lord and my Lord? Can you, who believe in a mystery God unknown, trust your mystery to bring you bread or to defend you against your open enemies? If so, on what occasion did he help you? If God is a mystery, you are lying to the world when you say that you know him. He wants to be known. It is his enemy, the devil, who does not want God to be known to you and me. Do you refer to God as he, him? These pronouns refer to a man. Do you say that you want to be like him? Surely you don't want to be a spirit without form, as spirits have no material form. Your God and my God is a material being, the supreme of beings. Who is that mystery God? Part 2. Did God say that he was a mystery God, or did someone say it of him? Did God say that he was only a spirit, or did someone say it of him? The most important question of all questions that one could ask is, who is God? It is like a child who does not know his father, asking his mother to tell him the name of his father, wanting to know what his father looks like, and if he favors his father. Can we not ask the same question who are seeking the knowledge of our Father, God?
Should we be called disbelievers or infidels just because we seek the truth or knowledge of our Father, God? The mother may in some cases think it best to keep the name of her child a secret, as it was in the case of Mary and Joseph 2,000 years ago.
But in the case of God, one would say that we all should know him, but at the proper time.
It has been for the past 6,000 years that we had to wait for the proper time to hear just who is our Father. For the false God, the devil, would not dare tell us lest he lose his followers. Naturally, the child will leave a foster father for his real father, especially when he is a good father. The real father by nature loves his own flesh and blood, regardless of how it looks or acts, for it is his own child. So it is with us, the so-called Negroes, lost found members of the Asiatic nation. He who has found us is our Father, the God of love, light, life, freedom, justice, and equality. He has found his own, though his own does not know him. They, the so-called Negroes, are following and loving a foster father, the devil, who has no love for him nor their real father, but seek to persecute and kill them daily. He, the devil, makes the lost and found children, the American so-called Negroes, think that their real Father God is a mystery, unknown, or is some invisible spook somewhere in space. The only chance that the children have to know their real Father is that he must come and make himself known by overpowering and freeing them from him whom they fear. The devils reared the poor so-called Negroes for 400 years and put fear in them when they were babies. They, the devils, kept them apart from their own kind coming in from abroad, so as to deprive them of any knowledge other than what he, the devil, has taught them. As soon as they hear of a so-called Negro learning and teaching his own people that which they, the devils, would not teach them, the devils then seek to kill that one or trail him wherever he goes, threatening those who would listen to him, believe him, and follow him. Knowing that their very presence and inquiries might frighten or scare Negroes, they ask, "What is it this you are listening to and believing in?" This will frighten most of them away from accepting his or her own salvation and keep them from returning to their own God, religion, and people. My people, if you only knew the time and presence of your God, Allah, there would be no fear for you nor grief, but you are deceived in the knowledge of your God. If your God were a mystery, you and I would be a mystery people. If he were a spirit and not a man, we would all be spirits and not human beings. If he were a mystery or only a spirit, the prophets could not have predicted the coming of that which no one has knowledge of, or of a spirit which cannot be seen, only felt. Because of the false teaching of our enemies, the devils, God has made himself known. For I teach not the coming of God, but the presence of God in person. This kind of teaching hurts the false teachings of the devils, for they knew that God would come in person after you. They, the devils, also are aware that God is present among us, but those of you who are asleep, they desire to keep asleep.
The enemies of God today are the same as they were thousands of years ago, thinking that they will be the winner against him. America, for her evil done to me and my people, shall be isolated and deceived by her friends. The heavens shall withhold their blessing until America is brought to a disgraceful ruin.
Is God a spirit or a man? God is a man, and we just cannot make him other than man, lest we make him an inferior one, for man's intelligence has no equal in other than man. His wisdom is infinite, capable of accomplishing anything that his brain can conceive. A spirit is subjected to us, and not we to the spirit. Habakkuk uses the pronoun he in reference to God. This pronoun he is only used in the case when we refer to a man or boy or something of the male sex. Are we living in a material universe or a spirit universe? We are material beings and live in a material universe. Would not we be making ourselves fools to be looking forward to see that which cannot be seen, only felt? Where is our proof for such a God spirit to teach that God is other than man? It is due to your ignorance of God, or you are one deceived by the devil, whose nature is to mislead you in the knowledge of God. You originally came from the God of righteousness, and have the opportunity to return, while the devils are from the man-devil Yakub, who has ruled the world for the past 6,000 years under falsehood, labeled under the name of God and his prophets. The worst thing to ever happen to the devils is the truth of them, made manifest that they are really the devils whom the righteous, all members of the black nation, should shun and never accept as truthful guides of God. This is why the devils have always persecuted and killed the righteous. But the time has at last arrived that Allah God will put an end to their persecuting and killing the righteous, the black nation. I and my followers have been suffering cruel persecution, police brutality for the past 34 years. But have patience, my dear followers, for release is in sight. Even those who made mockery of you shall be paid fully for his or her mockery. For the prophecy of Habakkuk is true if understood, wherein he says, Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, the so-called Negroes 3:13. Never before this time did anyone come for the salvation of the so-called Negroes in America whose rights have been ignored by their enemies, the white race, for 400 years. Now it is incumbent upon Allah to defend the rights of his lost, found, helpless people called Negroes by their enemies.
The whole of the 3rd chapter of Habakkuk is devoted to the coming and work of God against our enemies and our deliverance. We must not take our enemies for our spiritual guides, lest we regret it. You are already deceived by them. Why seek to follow them in their evil doings? If I would say that God is not man, I would be a liar before him and stand to be condemned. Remember, you look forward to seeing God or the coming of the Son of Man, a man from a man, and not the coming of a spirit. Let that one among you who believes God is other than man prove it. The coming of God, is he a man or a spirit?
According to the dictionary of the Bible, Teman, a son of Esau by Adah, Genesis 36:11, 15:42, and in 1 Corinthians 1:36. Now if Habakkuk saw God come or coming from the sons of Esau, ellipsos, then God must be a man and not a spook. If Habakkuk's 3:3 prophecy refers to some country, town, or city, if there be any truth at all in this prophecy, then we can say that this prophet saw God as a material being belonging to the human family of the earth, and not a spirit ghost. In the same chapter, the verse Habakkuk saw the Holy One from Mount Paran. This is also earthly, somewhere in Arabia. Here the Bible makes a difference between God and another person who is called the Holy One. Which one should we take for our God? For one is called God, while another one is called Holy One. The Holy One, his glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. It has been a long time since the earth was full of praise for a Holy One. Even to this hour, the people do not care for holy people, and will persecute and kill the Holy One if God does not intervene. In the 4th verse of the above chapter, it says, He had horns coming out of his hands, and there was the hiding of his power. Such science, to represent the God's power, could confuse the ignorant masses of the world. Two gods are here represented at the same time. It is good that God makes himself manifest to the ignorant world today. The burning coals went forth at his feet has a meaning, but what is the meaning? The ignorant do not know. The burning coals could refer to the anger and war among the people, where his foot trod within the borders of the wicked. Here God has feet. Spirits do not have feet and hands. This Holy One does not refer to anyone of the past, not Moses, Jesus, nor Muhammad of the past 1,300 years. For this Holy One, the perpetual hills did bow. Cushan in affliction, the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. What is meant by the curtains trembling? Who is Cushan? The mountains saw thee, they trembled. What does this mean? The sun and moon stood still in their habitation. What does this mean?
The answers to the above questions are easy when we understand who this God called the Holy One coming from Mount Paran is.
The 13th verse should clear the way for such undertaking, for it tells us why all these great things took place on the coming of the Holy One from Mount Paran. It says, Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, not for all people, for the salvation with thine anointed, his apostle. He wounded the head out of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundation unto the neck, by exposing the truth and ruling powers of the wicked race of devils. Cushan represents the black nation, which is afflicted by the white race. The curtains of the land of Midian could mean the falsehood spread over the people by the white race and their leaders trembling from being exposed by the truth. The mountains represent the great, rich, and powerful political men of the wicked. They also are trembling and being divided and scattered over the earth. The Holy One is God in person and not a spirit. The origin of God as a spirit and not a man. Take heed to yourselves that your hearts be not deceived, and you turn aside and serve other gods, worship them. Deuteronomy 11:16.
The American so-called Negroes are gravely deceived by their slave masters' teaching of God and the true religion of God. They do not know that they are deceived and do earnestly believe that they are taught right, regardless of how evil the white race may be.
Not knowing self or anyone else, they are a prey in the hands of the white race, the world's arch-deceivers, the real devils in person. You are made to believe that you worship the true God, but you do not. God is unknown to you, and that which the white race teaches you, a mystery God. The great arch-deceivers, the white race, were taught by their father Yaqub 6,000 years ago how to teach that God is a spirit, spook, and not a man. In the grafting of his people, the white race, Mr. Yaqub taught his people to contend with us over the reality of God by asking us of the whereabouts of that first one, God, who created the heavens and the earth. And that, Yaqub said, we cannot do.
Well, we all know that there was a God in the beginning that created all these things, and do know that he does not exist today. But we know again that from that God, the person of God continued until today in his people. And today, a supreme one, God, has appeared among us with the same infinite wisdom to bring about a complete change. This is he whom I preach and teach you to believe and obey. The devil calls him a mystery God, but yet claims that he begot a son by Mary.
They call on you and me to take this son of Mary for a God, who was a man before and after his death. Yet they deny the coming of God to be a man. If Jesus were a son of God, what about Moses and the other prophets? Were they not his sons, since they were his prophets? The belief in a God other than man, a spirit, Allah has taught me, goes back into the millions of years, long before Yaqub, the father of the devils, because the knowledge of God was kept as a secret from the public. This is the first time that it has ever been revealed, and we, the poor, rejected, and despised people, are blessed to be the first of all the people of earth to receive this secret knowledge of God. If this people, the white race, would teach you truth, which has been revealed to me, they would be hastening their own doom, for they were not created to teach us the truth, but rather to teach us falsehood, just contrary to the truth. It stands true that they are enemies of the truth by their ever warring against the truth. They know that Islam is the truth. They know that the history of them that God has revealed to me is the truth. But they do not like for you to know such truth of them. Therefore, they seek every means to oppose this teaching. They try every one of you that say that you believe it and are my followers. They are watching you and me, seeking a chance to do us harm. They are so upset and afraid that they visit you at your homes to question you of your sincerity to Islam. As David said in his Psalms 37:32, the wicked watcheth the righteous and seeketh to slay him. Also, Psalms 37:30, the mouth of the righteous speaketh wisdom, and his tongue talketh of judgment. And in another place, Psalm 94:16, who will rise up for me against the workers of iniquity? I have answered him and said, Here I am, take me. For the evil done against my people, the so-called Negroes, I will not keep silent until he executes judgment and defends my cause. Fear not my life, for he is well able to defend it. Know that God is a man and not a spook. The coming of the Son of Man, the great Mahdi, For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Matthew 24:27. My greatest and only desire is to bring true understanding of the Word of God, His prophets, and the Scriptures which the prophets were sent with, pertaining to the lost found people, the American so-called Negroes of God, and the judgment of the world. You must forget about ever seeing the return of Jesus, who was here 2,000 years ago. Set your heart on seeing the one that He prophesied would come at the end of the present world's time, the white race's time. He is called the Son of Man, the Christ, the Comforter. You are really foolish to be looking to see the return of the prophet Jesus. It is the same as looking for the return of Abraham, Moses, and Muhammad. All of these prophets prophesied the coming of Allah, or one with equal power, under many names. You must remember that Jesus could not have been referring to himself as returning to the people in the last days. He prophesied of another's coming who was much greater than he. Jesus even acknowledged that he did not know when the hour would come in these words.
But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Matthew 24:36. If he were the one to return at the end of the world, surely he would have had knowledge of the time of his return, the knowledge of the hour. But he left himself out of that knowledge and placed it where it belonged, as all the others, prophets, had done. No prophet has been able to tell us the hour of the judgment. No one but He, the great all-wise God, Allah. He is called the Son of Man, the Mahdi, the Christ. The prophets, Jesus included, could only foretell those things which would serve as signs, signs that would precede such a great one's coming to judge the world. The knowledge of the hour of judgment is with the executor only. The prophets teach us to let the past judgments of people, their cities, and their warners serve as a lesson or sign of the last judgment and its warners. Noah did not know the hour of the flood. Lot did not know the hour of Sodom and Gomorrah until the executors had arrived, and Jesus prophesied. Matthew 24:37-39. It will be the same in the last judgment of the world of Satan. You have gone astray because of your misunderstanding of the Scripture, the prophet Jesus, and the coming of God to judge the world. My corrections are not accepted. Your misunderstanding and misinterpretation of it is really the joy of devils, for it is the devil's desire to keep the so-called Negroes ignorant of the truth of God until they see it with their eyes. The truth of God is in the salvation and freedom of the so-called Negroes from the devil's power. Can you blame them? No. Blame yourself for being so foolish as to allow the devils to fool you in not accepting the truth after it comes to you. The devils have tried to deceive the people all over the earth with Christianity. That is, God the Father, Jesus the Son, the Holy Ghost. Three gods into one God. The resurrection of the Son and his return to judge the world, or that the Son is in some place above the earth, sitting on the right-hand side of the Father, waiting until the Father makes his enemies his footstool. The period of waiting is 2,000 years. Yet he died for the Father to save his enemies, the whole world of sinners.
My friends, use a bit of common sense. First, could a wonderful flesh and blood body made of the essence of our earth last 2,000 years on the earth or off the earth without being healed? Second, where exists such a heaven of the earth that flesh and blood of the earth can exist, since the Bible teaches that flesh and blood cannot enter heaven, Corinthians 15:50. Flesh and blood cannot survive without that of which it is made, the earth. Jesus' prophecy of the coming of the Son of Man is very clear, if you rightly understand. First, this removes all doubts about who we should expect to execute judgment. For if man is to be judged and rewarded according to his actions, who could be justified in sitting as judge of man's doings but another man? How could a spirit be our judge when we cannot see a spirit? And ever since life was created, life has had spirit. But the Bible teaches that God will be seen on the day of judgment. Not only the righteous will see him, but even his enemies shall see him. On that day, a son of a man will sit to judge men according to their works, who is the father of this son, coming to judge the world. Is his father of flesh and blood, or is he a spirit? Where is this son coming from? Prophet Jesus said, he will come from the east, Matthew 24:27, from the land and people of Islam, where all of the former prophets came from. Jesus compared his coming as the lightning. Of course, lightning cannot be seen or heard at a great distance. The actual light, the truth, which shineth even unto the west, is our day sun. But the Son of Man's coming is like both the lightning and our day sun. His work of the resurrection of the mentally dead so-called Negroes and judgment between truth and falsehood is compared with lightning on an instant. His swiftness in condemning the falsehood is like the sudden flash of lightning in a dark place. America is that dark place, where the darkness has blinded the people so that they cannot find the right way out. The sudden flash of lightning enables them to see that they are off from the right path. They walk a few steps toward the right way, but soon have to stop and wait for another bright flash. What they actually need is the light of the sun, God in person, that they may clearly see their way. The lightning does more than flash a light. It is also destructive, striking whom Allah pleases, or taking property as well as lives.
The brightness of its flashes almost blinds the eyes.
So it is with the coming of the Son of Man, with the truth, to cast it against falsehood, that it breaks the head. Just a little hint of it makes the falsehood begin looking guilty and seeking cover from the brightness of the truth. Sometimes lightning serves as a warning of an approaching storm. So does Allah warn us by sending his messengers with the truth before the approaching destruction of a people to whom chastisement is justly due.
They come flashing the truth in the midst of the spiritually darkened people. Those who love spiritual darkness will close their eyes to the flash of truth like lightning, pointing out to them the right way, thus blinding themselves from the knowledge of the approaching destruction of the storm of Allah, and are destroyed. As the lightning cometh out of the east, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be.
Let us reflect on this prophecy from the direction in which this Son shall come, out of the east. If he is to come from the east to chastise or destroy that of the west, then he must be pleased with the east. The dominant religion of the east is Islam. The holy religious teachings of all the prophets from Adam to Muhammad was none other than Islam. Holy Qur'an 4:163. They all were of the east and came from that direction with the light of the truth and shone toward the old wicked darkness of the west. But the west has ever closed its eyes, and thus making it necessary for the coming of the Son of Man, the great Mahdi, God in person.
Being the end of the signs, in his person, he dispels falsehood with the truth, as the sun dispels night on its rising from the east. Why should the tribes of the earth mourn? Because of the coming of the Son of Man, instead of rejoicing. The coming of Allah, God. The reality of God. I have been and am still trying to make clear to you how important it is. This knowledge of the true God, the reality of God, has been and is even now a mystery to the world of mankind, with a few exceptions. The day has come that all mankind must know the reality of Allah, God. There can be no judgment of the people until this knowledge has been given to the people.
How can we serve a God without knowledge of him? My people, the so-called Negroes, the tribe of Shabazz, are the worst off when it comes to the reality of God. The whole world has been and is looking for the coming of God. Several places in both the Bible and the Holy Qur'an refer to the coming of Allah, God, the coming of the Son of Man. Referring to God as the Son of Man should remove all doubts as to his being anything other than a man. The Bible mentions him as the Son of Man and also mentions him as not being a man but a spirit. On one side he is made clear, and on the other he is made a mystery. Representation such as this causes confusion in understanding. We are blind to the knowledge of God when we make him a mystery and unreal. Anyone so blind to the reality of God is the servant of the devil until he or she sees God as a reality. Thousands of years the devil has been blinding man to God's reality, and that is the reason why God had to come in person, and he has, to clear us of such ignorance and blindness to the knowledge of him. Therefore, we have the coming of Allah, God. He is referred to as the Son of Man because first, he is the Son of Man and gotten for a special purpose, which is to return the lost back to their own and to punish and destroy the wicked for their destruction of the righteous, that the righteous may live in peace and do the will of God of righteousness, free from trouble and interference. Second, he must be a man to deal with a man, and we cannot receive or respect other than man. Since his work is to destroy the wicked, he must remain hidden from the eyes of the world until the time is ripe, the end. For the two, God and devil, cannot rule together. The Son of Man, Allah, must wait until his time, after the works of the devil. 2 Thessalonians 2, 8, 9, Holy Quran 7, 14, 18. And another place in the Holy Quran describes them as the people with the blue eyes. Holy Quran 20, 102. Third, the reality of God is as clear as the reality of the devil, but we did not know it until his coming to judge the world. For instance, if we take God for something other than a man, not the man-devil, we cannot prove it. If we believe that he is a spirit and not a man, then we can never expect to have any knowledge of him except by the sense of feel. We cannot see a spirit, therefore the teachings of his coming would be false. The Spirit of life is and has been with us all of our lives. God is in person among us today. He is a man. He is in his time. God sees, hears, knows, wills, acts, and is a person, man. The evil workings of the devil must come to an end. The coming of God and the gathering together of his people. The prophets have warned us of a time that would come when God would judge the wicked and punish, or rather destroy the wicked, and give the earth over to the rule of a righteous people. So many of us have misunderstood just what we should expect. What will God look like? If we expect the destruction of the devil, what will the devil look like? How will I distinguish him? If the devil should be destroyed, what does that devil look like? In order not to follow him to his destruction, I must be able to recognize him so that he won't be able to deceive me. What world's end will come, and what is that world that is going to end? Does that include everything that makes up the solar system, the planet Earth? If so, what shall we expect? What kind of solar system will we have after the destruction of the present one? Think over these things. We must get down to the facts so that we can recognize them when they are presented to us. But you never questioned the first teacher. Shouldn't we be fair about this? Let us go after the thing right. If we want to give each teacher justice, we should start with the first one. When Moses began to preach to the Hebrews to make themselves ready to go out to another country that God had promised their fathers on the condition that they believe and obey, here was the reply. Who made you a judge over us? Let us question this as they questioned Moses. Why didn't you question Pharaoh? Who made you a judge over us? Question me with facts. If they did not question Pharaoh, why should they question Moses, since Pharaoh didn't say that a God sent him? They should have made Pharaoh answer the question, who made you God over us? They were born under Pharaoh's teaching. Therefore, from their early existence, they believed in Pharaoh right or wrong. They worshiped Pharaoh's God, and when Moses made himself present, they wanted Moses to give them a good knowledge of who had sent him and made him such a man. If today a Moses were in your midst, and he said, the God of your fathers has sent me, and the government of America has deceived you as to the knowledge of God and has you directly worshiping them, wouldn't your reply be the same as the one given to Moses? That is right. You are asking me that. A man questioned me the other day when he said, you mean to say that you talked to God face to face? Where was Moses, and what time was that? What did the God have in mind? If no one has gone to heaven or seen the face of God, then all of these prophets are liars. You must think these things over. You have a lot to learn if you understand it. Otherwise, you are still in the dark as to the truth. We are here to know whether God has visited America or whether he is yet to come. The hour can come at any day, because it is prophesied that it will come in any hour that you think not. Naturally, I had expected it to come at a certain day, but the book said you won't know the day nor the hour. If all of these signs of his coming are exhausted, and I don't see any end to the world, that is to show me that it could take place at any time. If there is such a thing as a judgment of the world, as you and I believe, if there are signs that will be produced before that particular destruction of the old world, how many signs do you know of today that have not been fulfilled that must now be fulfilled? If you know one sign that the Bible refers to that has not as yet taken place, point it out to me. Allah came to us from the holy city Mecca, Arabia in 1930. He used the name Wallace D. Farad, often signing it W.D. Farad. In the third year, 1933, he signed his name W.F. Muhammad, which stands for Wallace Farad Muhammad. He came alone. He began teaching us the knowledge of ourselves, of God and the devil, of the measurement of the earth, of other planets, and of the civilization of some of the planets other than Earth. He measured and weighed the earth and its water, the history of the moon, the history of the two nations, black and white, that dominate the earth. He gave the exact birth of the white race, the name of their God who made them, and how, and the end of their time, the judgment, how it will begin and end. He taught us the truth of how we were made slaves, and how we are kept in slavery by the slave master's children. He declared the doom of America for her evils to us was past due, and that she is number one to be destroyed. Her judgment could not take place until we hear the truth.
He declared that we were without the knowledge of self or anyone else, how we had been made blind, deaf, and dumb by this white race of people, and how we must return to our people, our God, and his religion of peace, Islam, the religion of the prophets. We must give up the slave names of our slave masters and accept the name of Allah, God, or one of his divine attributes. He also taught us to give up all evil doings and practices and do righteousness, or be destroyed from the face of the earth. He taught us that the slave masters had taught us to eat the wrong food, and that this wrong food is the cause of our sickness and short span of life. He declared that he would heal us and set us in heaven at once if we would submit to him. Otherwise, he would chastise us with a severe chastisement until we did submit, and that he was able to force the whole world into submission to his will. He said that he loved us, the so-called Negroes, his lost and found, so well that he would eat rattlesnakes to free us if necessary, for he has power over all things. I asked him, "Who are you, and what is your real name?" He said, "I am the one that the world has been expecting for the past 2,000 years. I said to him again, "What is your name?" He said, "My name is Mahdi. I am God. I came to guide you into the right path, that you may be successful and see the hereafter." He described the destruction of the world with bombs, poison gas, and finally with fire that would consume and destroy everything of the present world. Nothing of the present world of white mankind would be left. Those escaping the destruction would not be allowed to carry anything out with them. He pointed out a destructive, dreadful-looking plane that is made like a wheel in the sky today. It is a half-mile by a half-mile square. It is a humanly built planet. It is up there and can be seen twice a week. It is no secret. World with rain, snow, hail, and earthquakes. He spoke with authority, not as one who is under authority, but as one independent. He said the world's time was out in 1914, but people could get an extension of time depending upon their treatment of the righteous. He declared that there can be no judgment until we, the so-called Negroes, hear Islam, whether we accept it or not. This includes the history of the world and a knowledge of God and the devil. He condemned the teachings of God not being a man as a lie from the devils for the past 6,000 years. He said that Christianity was a religion organized and backed by the devils for the purpose of making slaves of black mankind. I also bear witness that it certainly has enslaved my people here in America 100%. He chose me to bear the message of life, Islam, to my people here. Islam is our salvation. It removes fear, grief, and sorrow from any believer, and it brings to us peace of mind of contentment. The greatest hindrance of the truth of our people is the preacher of Christianity. He will not accept it, nor is he content to let others alone who are trying to accept the truth. He is the man who stands in the way of the salvation of his people. And as soon as the people awaken to the knowledge of this man in their way to God, freedom, justice, and equality, and stop following him, the sooner they will be in heaven while they live. The coming of the Son of Man. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all of the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Here, in the plainest words, is the Son of Man on the judgment day. We are not told by either Moses or Jesus to look for God on judgment day to be anything other than man. Spirits and spooks cannot be the judge of man's affair. Man is material of the earth. How long will you be ignorant of the reality of God? You are poisoned by the devil's touch. Why are you looking for a God that is not flesh and blood as you are? Spirits can only be found in another being like yourself. What pleasure would you have in an invisible world? And on the other hand, what pleasure would spirits have in this material universe of ours? Your very nature is against your being anything other than a human being. These are the days of the resurrection of the mentally dead so-called Negroes. The Son of Man is here. His coming has been fulfilled. He seeks that which was lost, the so-called Negroes. Many now are receiving his name, and that name alone will save you. The wicked nations of the earth are sorry and angry to see the Son of Man set up a government of justice and peace over this, their wicked world. They see signs in the heavens, sky, of great power to execute judgment on the world of the wicked, and they mourn. We must have a new ruler and a new government where the people can enjoy freedom, justice, and equality. Let the so-called Negroes rejoice, for Allah has prepared for them what the eye has not seen, the ear has not heard, and the heart has not been able to conceive. The enemy knows this to be true, and is now doing everything to prevent the so-called Negroes from seeing the hereafter. The coming of the Son of Man. The infidels are angry. Who is his father if God is not his father? God is his father, but the Father is also a man. You have heard of old that God prepared a body for the expected Son of Man. Jesus is a specially prepared man to do a work for redeeming the lost sheep, the so-called Negro. He had to have a body that would be part of each side, black and white, half and half. Therefore, being born or made from both people, he is able to go among both black and white without being discovered or recognized. This he has done in the person of Master W.F. Muhammad, the man who was made by his father to go and search for the lost members of the tribe of Shabazz. Master W.F. Muhammad is that Son of Man whom the world has been expecting to come for 2,000 years, seeking to save that which was lost. There are no historical records that there was ever a people lost from each other for 400 years other than we, the so-called Negroes. We have been so long separated from each other that we have lost the knowledge of each other. Even today, the white American slave masters are ever on the watch to keep out any Asiatic influence that might come among the so-called Negroes to teach them the truth. They are our real open enemies. This is no secret. The Son of Man is after the so-called Negroes to set them in heaven and his enemies in hell. After his conquest of the black nation's enemies, the world will know and recognize him, Allah, to be God alone. There is no problem today that is as hard to solve as the problem of uniting the American so-called Negroes. They are like a dead man totally without life. They have lost all love of self and kind, and have gone all out in loving their enemies. They do not seem to want any God to do anything like blessing them unless that God blesses their enemies too. Fear of their enemy is the real cause. The time is now ripe that they should have no fear, only the fear of Allah, who is in person among them to save them from their enemies. By all means they must be separated from the white race in order that the scripture might be fulfilled. For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries, and I will bring you into your own land. Ezekiel 36:24. The so-called Negroes have no home that they can call their own. They have helped the white race to own a free country, but they have nothing for themselves. This is the purpose of his coming, to give everyone that which is rightfully theirs. The Son of Man has power over all things. You cannot find a defense against him in a war. Your weapons mean nothing. The powers of heaven and earth today will be ordered to fight on the side of the Mahdi against his enemies. He is the friend of the so-called Negroes and not of the white people. His purpose is to take the so-called Negroes and kill their enemies, although many of us will suffer from persecution and hunger. But the good end is for those of you who will hold fast to Allah and his religion Islam. They, the devils, are now planning many tricks to keep the so-called Negroes here with them to suffer the fire of hell, which they, the devils, cannot escape. Fly to Allah. Come follow me. Although I may look insignificant to you, you will find salvation with us. The white race is excited and cannot think rightly for themselves. The so-called Negroes, Muslims in their midst, are a shelter, but little do they know it. Allah, the best knower. There are many other chapters of the Holy Quran Sharif that open with the above words. Allah is the best knower. The beautiful teachings of the Holy Quran have no equal in other scriptures. All so-called Negro preachers should have one, but be sure it is the one translated by Yusuf Ali or Maulvi Muhammad Ali. Any other translation of the Holy Quran by Christian authors is as poisonous to the reader as a rattlesnake.
What I am trying to make clear is that white people do not believe in Allah and Islam or the prophets of Allah. Why then should you seek the truth of it from them? You will soon come to know that you should not seek any truth from them. They have you following in the wrong direction and hope to keep you like that. But by my Allah's power and wisdom and my life's blood, you shall know the truth even against your own will. They, white people, have nearly all of the poor black preachers on their side to oppose Allah, myself, and Islam, the religion of righteous. They will fail and be brought to disgrace as Pharaoh's magicians and he himself were by Allah, God. For you have not known him or his religion, as Israel had not known God by his name Jehovah. Exodus 6:3. They felt that they should not believe Moses' representation of God by any other name than God Almighty, regardless of Moses' stress upon Jehovah as being the God of their fathers. Pharaoh had not used that name Jehovah, so Israel would not accept it until a showdown between Jehovah and Pharaoh. I would not like to have you wait until a showdown between Allah and the modern Pharaoh's people. Therefore I come to you with the truth, verifying that which is before it, and giving good news to the believers that they most certainly shall have heaven in this life. I also come to you with a warning to those who disbelieve that you most certainly shall have hell in this life, and in the hereafter you most certainly will be among the losers. Or do they say, he has forged it? Nay, it is the truth from the Lord, that you may warn a people to whom no warning has come before, that they may follow the right direction. Holy Qur'an 32:3. You say, who is this Allah and his religion Islam? No, my people, the divine supreme being has 99 attributes that make up his name, and Allah is the 100th. Surely his are the most beautiful names. He will make himself known to the world that he is God, and besides him there is no God, and that I am his messenger, that Islam is a religion backed by the power of Allah God, to free you from the hands of your merciless enemies, the slave masters, once and forever. Allah, your God, will grant you power to overcome your enemies, though their power may look as endurable as the mountains. Fear not. Allah is the best knower. Armageddon has started, and after it there will be no Christian religion or churches. Jesus was a Muslim, not a Christian. The days of Allah. Say to those who believe that they forgive those who do not fear the days of Allah, that he may reward a people for what they earn. Holy Qur'an 45:14. What is meant by days of Allah are the battles between right and wrong. They are often mentioned as follows: the days of judgment, the days of the resurrection, the days of the Son of Man, and the days of Allah. These days must not be mistaken for the regular 24-hour day. No, the days of Allah, the days of the resurrection, the days of judgment, and the days of the Son of Man mean years, not the common 24-hour day.
What will make us know when we are living in the days of Allah? It is by the fulfilling of the predictions made by the prophets of Allah long before they come to pass. I quote Maulvi Muhammad Ali's footnote 2276 on this verse, in which he says, "The days of Allah are the contests in which the righteous shall be made successful, that no one can deny, for this is a sign for the disbelievers who have enjoyed great temporary prosperity, and who thought that they were too rich and powerful to be brought into a state of helplessness. Although they have the histories of those who were before them, there is no difference between the disbelievers today or the past. We are living in the days of Allah. The earth and its people have been ruled by the evil race known as the white race. In these days of Allah, the righteous, the Muslims, are now gaining power over the wicked and will soon rule the earth again as they did before the creation of the white race.
Take notice of my followers who have given up the wicked ways of the white race and their self-styled Christianity and have accepted the truth. They are gradually becoming the most successful people in the world. Allah has chosen us. We have chosen Allah. Who can successfully oppose Allah in his days and time of rule? It is easy for a weak and poverty-stricken people to give up, but it is not so easy when they are powerful and wealthy. They think there will be no end to their power and wealth, which is made to deceive them. If God was your father, you would love me. If God was your father, you would love me. John 8:42.
Read and study the above chapter of John 8:42, all of you who are Christians, believers in the Bible and Jesus, as you say. If you understand it right, you will agree with me that the whole Caucasian race is a race of devils. They have proved to be devils in the Garden of Paradise and were condemned 4,000 years later by Jesus. Likewise, they are condemned today by the great Mahdi Muhammad as being nothing but devils in the plainest language. The so-called American Negroes have been deceived and blinded by their unlikeness, soft, smooth, buttered words, eye-winking, back-patting, a false show of friendship and handshaking. The above-mentioned acts, with the exception of handshaking, by men are a disgrace to any decent, intelligent person. Know the truth and be free of such disgrace. Surely, if the father of the two peoples, black and white, were the same, the two would love each other because they are the same flesh and blood. It is natural, then, for them to love each other. Again, it is not unnatural, then, for a member or members of a different race or nation not to love the non-member of their race or nation as their own. The nature in which we are created will not allow us to be like that, and it works the same in all things living that have a bit of intelligence, including the birds and beasts. The argument here between Jesus and the Jews is that the Jews claim they all were the same people, children of one God or Father. But this Jesus disagreed with and proved they were not from the same Father. He, having a knowledge of both fathers, knew their father devil before his fall, and before he had produced his children, the white race, of whom the Jews are members. Here, in this chapter, John 8, it shows there was no love in the Jews for Jesus. Persecution follows the coming of God. He, Mr. W.F. Muhammad, God in person, chose to suffer 3½ years to show his love for his people, who have suffered over 300 years at the hands of a people who by nature are evil and wicked and have no good in them. He was persecuted, sent to jail in 1932, and ordered out of Detroit on May 26, 1933. He came to Chicago in the same year and was arrested almost immediately on his arrival and placed behind prison bars. He submitted himself with all humbleness to his persecutors. Each time he was arrested, he sent for me, so that I might see and learn the price of truth for us, the so-called American Negroes, members of the Asiatic nation. He was well able to save himself from such suffering, but how else was the scripture to be fulfilled? We followed in his footsteps, suffering the same persecution. My people are yet sound asleep to the knowledge of the good that is being carried on for their deliverance. The whole world of our kind awaits the awakening, and our awakening is the last step in the resurrection and judgment of the world. It is a sin that we were put so soundly to sleep. The end of the world has arrived, and most of us know it not. Our enemy's greatest desire is that we remain asleep. My people fight and oppose the God of our own salvation. Allah chose for us Islam as a religion. He desires to set us in heaven at once, on condition that we submit to him and accept the religion of Islam, the religion of God and his prophets. In this religion, Islam, he offers us universal friendship, and we who have submitted to him know this to be true. We know white people have and will continue to persecute anyone who offers help to us, the so-called American Negroes, Asiatics. Should persecution or even death stop the worthy help that will save the lives of the so-called Negroes? No, it shall not. The so-called Negroes are absolutely friendless and have sought in vain friendship from their enemies due to the ignorance of self and their enemies. Now they are offered universal friendship if they will only accept their own, Allah and Islam. Seek first the friendship of your own people, and then the friendship of others, if there is any friendship in the others. We have made the grave mistake of Lazarus and the prodigal son, St. Luke chapter 15, the one who was so charmed over the wealth and food of the rich man that he could not leave his gate to seek the same for himself, regardless of the disgraceful condition in which the rich man puts him, even to sending his dogs to attack him. The angels had to come and take him away. The other, prodigal son, being tempted by the loose life of strange women, drinking, gambling, and adultery, caused him to love the stranger's way of life so much so that it cost him all that he originally possessed, self-independence and divine guidance.
His father, God in person, had to come and be his representative to again meet his brothers, family, and friends. Nothing fits the description of us better, the so-called Negroes, Asiatics. Many of us today are so lazy that we are willing to suffer anything rather than go for self. It is true that our God has come to set us in heaven, but not a heaven wherein we will not have to work. Fear is the worst enemy that we have, but entire submission to Allah, God, and His messenger will remove this fear. The white race put fear in our foreparents when they were babies. So says the word of Allah. We must have for our peace and happiness, the 17 million so-called Negroes, that which other nations have. This before-mentioned peace and happiness cannot come under any other flag but our own. If God desires for us such joy, why shouldn't we give up begging and be real men and sit with the rulers of the earth ruling our own? Our first step is to give back to the white man his religion, Christianity, his church, and his names. These three are chains of slavery that hold us in bondage to them. We are free when we give up the above three. The so-called Negroes must know that they have been deceived and must be brought face to face with God and the devil. They must get away from that old slavery teaching that Jesus, who was killed 2,000 years ago, is still alive somewhere waiting and listening to their prayers. He was only a prophet like Moses and the other prophets, and had the same religion, Islam. He did his work and is dead like others of his time and has no knowledge of their prayers to him. Since Islam overran mankind in the 7th century after Jesus and is still a power over man, why did not the translators of the Bible mention it? Why didn't they give us the name of the religions of the prophets, since they claim a religion for Jesus? The so-called Negroes' salvation. The number one principle of belief is that your God is one God, and beside him you have no other God that can help you. I shall begin with this, the most important of all principles of belief. How many non-Muslims will we find who do not believe in God as being one God? Regardless of the Trinity belief preached by the Christians, they, the Christians, claim and agree that Allah, God, is one God. They make fools of themselves when they reject Islam and the Muslims' 5 principles of belief. One God, his prophets, his books, the resurrection, the judgment. How then did they, the Christians, go astray, believing in 3 gods? Nevertheless, they make one of the 3 the father of the other 2, and these remaining 2 the equal of the father. The so-called Negroes have been led into the gravest of errors in the knowledge of God, Allah, and the true religion Islam by their white slave masters. They, the so-called Negroes, have been robbed more than any other people on the planet Earth. If they will only read and listen to the simplest of truths of which I write and speak, have 3 essentials in it: power, light, and life. I am a mortal like you. It is revealed to me that your God is one God. 18:110. Will you not bear witness with Muhammad in the above quoted chapter and verse of the Holy Qur'an? The white race will not agree with Muhammad and the true religion of God, Allah, which is Islam, because of the nature in which they were created, as they are the opposers of Allah and the truth. They, white people, know that the so-called Negroes believe in them, but with the help of my God Allah, who came in the person of Master W.F. Muhammad, we will show up the false with the truth in its plainest, simplest form. It is foolish to believe in 3 gods, foolish to make Jesus the Son and the equal of his Father, the one of 2,000 years ago. If Jesus said in his suffering, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Matthew 27:46. Then most surely he did not recognize himself as being the equal of God, and no other scripture shows Jesus as the equal of God. If Jesus said that he was sent, Matthew 15:24 and John 4:34, then he cannot claim to be equal of his sender. God is not sent by anyone. He is a self-sender. He says in Isaiah 44:8, 45:22, "Is there a God besides me? I know not any." In another place he states, "I am God, there is none else." Isaiah 46:9. Also, one God and none other. Mark 12:32. Allah is judging today. Today is the day in which the God of justice, Allah, is judging between man and nation and nation.
To understand the present, we must learn of the past. We are 4,000 years from Moses, and Moses was 2,000 years after the creation of the Caucasian race, or 2,000 years after the fathers of the Caucasian or white race of Europe. This makes 6,000 years from the time of the birth or grafting of the Caucasian race. In 4,000 years of the white man's rule, they have practiced and exercised their power and authority over us as was divinely given to them. The trouble is going on between the so-called Negroes and the American white people, who have always shown themselves to be the enemies and haters of their slaves, the so-called Negroes. This thing must come to an end. So God himself intervenes to make manifest the two peoples. Everything that is of good, according to recorded history, has trouble in its infancy, but as it grows, it triumphs in the end. The so-called Negroes must know the truth. This is the only way to bring them into the light of truth, as they are spiritually blind to the knowledge of themselves, but God himself. Prophets of God can only deliver the truth to the people, but to make them to believe, see, and understand it, and accept or reject it, this must come from God. It took the destruction of the people of Korah by Almighty God to make Israel understand that it was God who had appointed Moses to lead them, and that self-made leaders such as Korah would not work in the way of delivering Israel, another country. Because Allah had chosen Moses to act as a guide for Israel, and all other self-made leaders would be failures, he sent poisonous and fiery serpents against them to bite and kill those who rebelled. So this is a warning and a sign for us today that when God intends to separate a people or remove a people and put another in their stead, it is his work and the people who rebel against his work who will come to naught. The so-called American Negroes must learn these truths today, that they cannot deliver themselves from the evil they are suffering from the white race without the help of Allah. You see the trouble that our people and the American whites are suffering from, the struggle of our people with a few whites on their side to bring about integration between the two races, of which is opposed by God himself. It is the time that the two people should separate. Submit to Allah God and fear not. Islam, the religion of entire submission to the will of Allah God. Nay, whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, he will get his regard with his Lord. On such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Holy Qur'an 2:112. That and that alone is salvation according to the Holy Qur'an. Fear is the number one enemy that is blocking progress and success from coming to the so-called Negroes of America. This fear causes them to grieve. The whole world knows the poor so-called Negroes of America have suffered and still suffer more grief and sorrow than any people on the earth. This fear is the fear of the slave masters, white man, and what the slave masters dislike. Let the so-called Negroes submit to Allah, God, and they will not fear any more, nor will they grieve. As it is written, the fear of man bringeth a snare, Proverbs 29. It has surely snared the so-called Negroes. The Lord of the worlds, finder of we the lost members of the Asiatic alone is salvation according to the Holy Qur'an. Fear is the number one enemy that is blocking progress and success from coming to the so-called Negroes of America. This fear causes them to grieve. The whole world knows the poor so-called Negroes of America have suffered and still suffer more grief and sorrow than any people on the earth. This fear is the fear of the slave masters, white man, and what the slave masters dislike. Let the so-called Negroes submit to Allah, God, and they will not fear any more, nor will they grieve. As it is written, the fear of man bringeth a snare, Proverbs 29. It has surely snared the so-called Negroes. The Lord of the worlds, finder of we the lost members of the Asiatic black nation for 400 years, said that the slave masters put fear in our fathers when they were babies. Allah is the only one that can remove this fear from us, but he will not remove it from us until we submit to his will, not our will, and fear him and him alone. Then, as it is written, and it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from sorrow and from thy fear and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. Isaiah 14:3. There are so many places that I could point out in the Bible and Holy Qur'an that warn us of fearing our enemies above or equal to the fear of Allah, God. It is a fool who has greater fear of the devils, white man, than Allah, who has the power to destroy the devils and their followers. Revelation 21:8, Holy Quran 7:18, and 15:43. We must remember that if Islam means entire submission to the will of Allah, that and that alone is the true religion of Allah. Do not you and your religious teachers and the prophets of old teach that the only way to receive God's help or guidance is to submit to His will? Then why not Islam? Islam, is the true religion of Allah and the only way to success. Original man, know thyself. It is knowledge of self that the so-called Negroes lack, which keeps them from enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. This belongs to them divinely as much as it does to other nations of the earth. It is Allah's, God's will and purpose that we shall know ourselves. Therefore, He came Himself to teach us the knowledge of self. Who is better knowing of who we are than God Himself? He has declared that we are descendants of the Asian black nation and of the tribe of Shabazz. You might ask, who is this tribe of Shabazz? Originally, they were the tribe that came with the earth, or this part, 66 trillion years ago when a great explosion on our planet divided it into two parts. One we call Earth and the other Moon. This was done by one of our scientists, God, who wanted for people to speak one language, one dialect for all, but was unable to bring this about. He decided to kill us by destroying our planet, but still he failed. We were lucky to be on this part, Earth, which did not lose its waters in the mighty blasting away of the part called Moon. We, the tribe of Shabazz, says Allah God, were the first to discover the best part of our planet to live on, the rich Nile Valley of Egypt and the present seat of the holy city Mecca, Arabia. The origin of our kinky hair, says Allah, came from one of our dissatisfied scientists 50,000 years ago who wanted to make all of us tough and hard in order to endure the life of the jungles of East Asia, Africa, and to overcome the beasts there. But he failed to get the others to agree with him. He took his family and moved into the jungle to prove to us that we could live there and conquer the wild beasts, and we have. So, being the first and the smartest scientist on the deportation of our moon, and the one who suffered most of all, Allah God, has decided to place us on the top with a thorough knowledge of self and His guidance. We are the mighty, the wise, the best, but do not know it. Being without the knowledge, we disgrace ourselves, subjecting ourselves to suffering and shame. We could not get the knowledge of self until the coming of Allah. To know thyself is to know all men, as from us came all, and to us all will return. I must keep warning you that you should give up the white race's names and religion in order to gain success. Their days of success are over. Their rule will last only as long as you remain asleep to the knowledge of self. Awake and know that Allah has revealed the truth. Stop believing in something coming to you after you are physically dead. That is untrue, and no one can show any proof of such belief. Again, know that Jesus was only a prophet and cannot hear you pray any more than Moses or any other dead prophet. Know, too, that this white race was created to be the enemy of black mankind for 6,000 years, which makes their number to be 6. That is not your number or mine. We do not have a number because we have no birth record. Do not let anyone fool you.
This is the separation and the war of Armageddon. First, love yourself. One of the gravest handicaps among the so-called Negroes is that there is no love for self, nor love for his or her own kind. This not having love for self is the root cause of hate, dislike, disunity, disagreement, quarreling, betraying, stool pigeons, and fighting and killing one another. How can you be loved if you have not love for self and your own nation and dislike being a member of your own? Then what nation will trust your love and membership? You say of yourself, I love everybody. This cannot be true. Love for self comes first. The Bible, the book that you claim to believe, says, Love the brotherhood, 1 Peter 2:17. Love one another, John 15:17. Love of self comes first. The one who loves everybody is the one who does not love anyone. This is the false teaching of the Christians, for the Christians war against Christians. They have the Bible so twisted by adding in and taking out of the truth that it takes only God, or one whom God has given the knowledge of the book, to understand it. The Bible puts more stress upon the love for thy neighbor than the love for the brother. When asked, "Who is my neighbor?" the answer was contrary and incorrect. Jesus' answer was that of two men who were on a journey. They were not from the same place. One was from Jerusalem, the other one was a Samaritan. The Samaritan came to where the man from Jerusalem lay wounded by the robbers who had stripped him of his possessions. The Samaritan showed sympathy for the fellow traveler. He was not a neighbor in the sense of the word. A neighbor can be an enemy. Many enemies live in the same neighborhood of a good neighbor. But the answer that Jesus gave was a futile one, which could be classified as a parable of the so-called Negroes and their slave masters. The so-called Negroes fell into the hands of the slave masters who have robbed, spoiled, wounded, and killed them. The Good Samaritan here would be the Mahdi, Allah, God in person, and he is often referred to by the Christians as the second coming of Jesus, or the Son of Man to judge man. This one will befriend the poor, the so-called Negroes, and heal their wounds by pouring into their heads knowledge of self and others, and free them of the yoke of slavery, and kill the slave masters, as Jehovah did in the case of Pharaoh and his people, to free Israel from bondage and the false religion and gods of Pharaoh. There are many other proofs in the Bible which agree with the above answer. Love yourself and your kind. Let us refrain from doing evil to each other, and let us love each other as brothers, as we are the same flesh and blood. In this way, you and I will not have any trouble in uniting. It is a fool who does not love himself and his people. Your black skin is the best, and never try changing its color. Stay away from intermixing with your slave master's children. Love yourself and your kind. Understand self. There are some efforts to celebrate a so-called Negro History Week, and some of my people will participate. The planning of that week to teach the slave a knowledge of his past is not complete, sufficient, or comprehensive enough to enable my people to learn the true knowledge of themselves. It is important that my people learn the true knowledge of self, as it means their salvation. We are not Negroes because God, whose proper name is Allah, has taught me who we are. We are not colored people because God has taught me who the colored people are. The American Negro is without a knowledge of self. You are a so-called Negro because you are not a Negro. Allah has given to me our proper names, the people from whom we were taken and brought here to the shores of North America, and the history of our forefathers. Allah has taught me, and today I do not fear to tell you that you can discard the name Negro. We are not Negroes. We are not colored. Those are some of the main things which we should remember. We must become aware of the knowledge of self and the time in which we are living. You must know these things whether you agree that Elijah Muhammad is on time or out of time. If what I say is out of season, it goes for nothing. If I am on time or in season, then all I say will bear fruit. There is much misunderstanding among us because of our inferior knowledge of self. We have been to schools where they do not teach us the knowledge of self. We have been to the schools of our slave master children. We have been to their schools and gone as far as they allowed us to go. That was not far enough for us to learn a knowledge of self. The lack of knowledge of self is one of our main handicaps. It blocks us throughout the world. If you were the world and you were a part of the world, you would also turn a man down if he did not know who he actually was. If we, the so-called Negroes, do not know our own selves, how can we be accepted by a people who have a knowledge of self? Are we representing ourselves as Negroes and colored people in the ancient history of black men? Our search of the ancient history of the black man of the earth will prove that not once in time were Negroes or colored people living in Asia or Africa. How did we come by those names? The names are from the slave masters. They have called us by their names and the nicknames used among themselves. It even seems that we like being called by the slave master's name. After nearly 100 years of freedom, we are still representing ourselves by the names our slave masters called us. We must learn that the slave masters' names are not accepted by God or by the righteous people of God. It is time for us to learn who we really are, and it is time for us to understand ourselves. That true knowledge is here for you today, whether you accept it or reject it. God has said that we are members of the original people or black nation of the earth. Original means first. Historian J.A. Rogers points out in his book that beyond the cotton fields of the South and long before the white man himself was a part of our planet, we were the original people ruling the earth, and according to the Holy Qur'an, we had governments superior to any we are experiencing today. Trace over the earth. Check back 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000 years ago. Look at history. Who were those people? They were our people. Today we are confronted with proof of who the original people are and who shall live on this earth and call it their own. Help self before helping others. Many of my people, the so-called Negroes, say we should help the nations of Africa, which are awakening. This has been said as if we owned America. We are so foolish. What part of America do you have that you can offer toward helping Africa? Who is independent, the nations of Africa or we? The best act would be to request the independent governments of Africa and Asia to help us. We are the ones who need help. We have little or nothing to offer as help to others. We should begin to help at home first. We are 20 million strong. Many of the nations today that have their independence and those who are getting their independence are much smaller in number than my people in America, who are dependent on the slave master. We do not have 2 feet of earth for our nation of people. You and I here in America are licking the boots of the slave master, begging him for the right of independent people. Yes, we are licking his boots. Sir, let me shine your shoes. You have been doing that for approximately 400 years. Today, if one rises up in your midst and says we should not lick the slave master's boots, we should lick our own boots, you would say, he should be killed. He should be killed because he is teaching us to hate. My people, you are in a dangerous position. Get that fear out of you and stand up for your people. Who are you not to die for your people? Who am I not to die for my people? If I am shot down or cut down today, who is little Elijah Muhammad to 20 million of you? If 1 million of us throw ourselves in the fire for the benefit of the 20 million, the loss will be small compared to the great gain our people will make as a result of that sacrifice. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims gave their lives in Pakistan to get their nation's independence. They were successful. The black men in Africa are fighting and dying today in unity for their independence. We sit here like pampered babies. We cannot even stand up on the floor, not to mention taking a chance of crawling out of the door. We are too careful of shedding blood for ourselves. We are willing to shed all of it for the benefit of others. I am not trying to get you to fight. That is not even necessary. Our unity will win the battle. Not one of us will have to raise a sword. Not one gun would we need to fire. The great cannon that will be fired is our unity. Our unity is the best. Why are you afraid to unite? Why are you afraid to accept Allah and Islam? It is only because the slave master did not teach you of this. We must unite to ourselves as a nation of people. Separation of the so-called Negroes from their slave masters' children is a must. Negroes from their slave masters' children is a must. It is the only solution to our problem. You must know that this is the time of our separation and the judgment of this world, the Caucasian, which you and I have known. Therefore Allah has said to me that the time is right for you and me to accept our own, the whole planet Earth. Are you waiting for the divine destruction? Come, let us reason together. First, in order for us to reason, you must have a thorough knowledge of self. Who is going to teach you that knowledge of self? Who are you waiting for to teach you the knowledge of self? Surely not your slave master who blinded you to that knowledge of self. The slave master will not teach you the knowledge of self, as there would not be a master-slave relationship any longer. What the so-called Negro must do for himself. Men everywhere are seeking unity among themselves. Every race of people want unity with their own kind first, except my people, the so-called Negro in America. Our condition and lack of love for ourselves must be attributed to the slave master. He has been our teacher until the coming of Almighty God Allah. The slave master has robbed my people of their God, religion, name, language, and culture. The worst kind of crime has been committed against us, for we were robbed of our desire to even want to think and do for ourselves. We are often pictured by the slave masters, the lazy and trifling people who are without thoughts of advancement. I say this is a condition which the slave master very cleverly wanted and created within and among the so-called Negroes. Robert H. Kinzer and Edward Sarragan in their book, The Negro in American Business, page 81, states that the history of America would be different today if the slaves freed from bondage had been given, in addition to the 3 amendments to the Constitution, the famous 40 acres and a mule. The slaves instead started not only without land and the money to purchase it, but with few avenues open to earn and save money. Ownership of producing land is a prime and necessary part of freedom. A people cannot exist freely without land, and the so-called Negro in America is evidence of that fact. The slave master passed laws limiting the so-called Negro in land ownership or limiting the areas in which such purchases or even rentals could be made. Are you not left restricted to the poorer sections the slave master is abandoning throughout America?
Again, Mr. Kinzer and Mr. Sarragan gave a hint in their book of the great psychological strategy of the slave master on his slave. That is the original brainwash. On page 84, the authors state that the land sold to the ex-slave was of poor quality and in an inferior location. They state the so-called Negro faced pressure against his becoming a farm owner and pressure from the white community that he remain a tenant. We encountered credit difficulties, hardships of repayment of loans, and hardships with white executives from whom the loans must be asked. All of this is part of the clever plan to discourage my people from wanting to own producing land for themselves and to cause a great dislike within them for having anything to do with tilling, cultivating, extracting, and producing for themselves as other free and independent people. It is a shame. This shows you and I what white America is to us, and just why we have not been able to do anything worthwhile for self. They want us to be helpless so they can mistreat us as always. We must come together and unite. It is time. I think it is a disgrace for us to be satisfied with only a servant's part. We should and must, as other people, want for ourselves what other civilized nations have. Let us do for ourselves that which we are begging the slave master to do for us. Do not be fooled by the false promise of civil rights and the softening of their language. It is offered to you now to keep you from becoming free of their evil plans of depriving you of the offer made to us by Allah. If we would submit to Him, He will set us in heaven at once. It is only justice that we be given land and provisions for a start, so we may do for ourselves. This is what the other new emerging nations are given. We want good, productive land, not earth that is scorched, but land that will produce crops and hold foundations for structures. Let us make this clear. I am not begging, for it pleases Allah. He will give us a home, and I am with Him.
Today, according to Allah's word, we are living in a time of the great separation of the blacks and the whites. The prophecy, 400 years of slavery, as to the time the so-called Negroes would serve white people, ended in 1955. The so-called Negroes must return to their own. The separation would be a blessing for both sides. It was the only solution according to the Bible for Israel and the Egyptians. It will prove to be the only solution for America and her slaves.
Get knowledge to benefit self. I am for the acquiring of knowledge, or the accumulating of knowledge, as we now call it education. First, my people must be taught the knowledge of self. Then and only then will they be able to understand others and that which surrounds them. Anyone who does not have a knowledge of self is considered a victim of either amnesia or unconsciousness and is not very competent. The lack of knowledge of self is a prevailing condition among my people here in America. Gaining the knowledge of self makes us unite into a great unity. Knowledge of self makes you take on the great virtue of learning. Many people have attempted to belittle or degrade my followers by referring to them as unlettered or unschooled. They do this to imply that the believers in Islam are ignorant. If such a claim were so, then all the more credit should be given for our striving for self-elevation with so little. But truth represents itself and stands by itself. No followers, nor any other people are more zealous about the acquiring of knowledge than my followers. Throughout the Holy Qur'an, the duty of a Muslim to acquire knowledge is spelled out. My people should get an education which will benefit their own people and not an education adding to the storehouse of their teacher. We need education, but an education which removes us from the shackles of slavery and servitude. Get an education, but not an education which leaves us in an inferior position and without a future. Get an education, but not an education that leaves us looking to the slave master for a job. Education for my people should be where our children are off to themselves for the first 15 or 16 years in classes, separated by sex. Then they could and should seek higher education without the danger of losing respect for self or seeking to lose their identity. No people strive to lose themselves among other people except the so-called American Negro.
This they do because of their lack of knowledge of self. We should acquire an education where our people will become better students than their teachers. Get an education which will make our people produce jobs for self and will make our people willing and able to go and do for self.
Is this not the goal and aim of many foreign students who are studying in this country? Will not these students return to their own nations and give their people the benefit of their learning? Did not Nkrumah return to Ghana to lead his people to independence with the benefit of learning he acquired here in America and elsewhere? Did not Dr. Hastings Banda return to give the benefit of his education to his people who are striving toward freedom and independence in Nyasaland? Did not Nnamdi Azikiwe of Nigeria give the benefit of his education to the upliftment and independence of his people? Does not America offer exchange scholarships to smaller, weaker, and dependent foreign governments so their students will acquire knowledge to aid the people of those countries? Then why shouldn't the goal in education be the same for you and me? Why is scorn and abuse directed toward my followers and myself when we say our people should get an education which will aid, benefit, and uplift our people? Any other people would consider it a lasting insult of the worst type to ask them to refrain from helping their people to be independent by contributing the benefit of their knowledge. Get an education, but one which will instill the idea and desire to get something of your own, a country of your own, and jobs of your own. I recall in 1922 or 1923, when a debate was taking place in Congress concerning appropriation of funds for Howard University, a school set aside to train my people in the nation's capital. A senator said this, and it is in the records to be examined, in effect: what would be the need of the government appropriating money to educate Negroes?
He said that they would not teach our people the science of modern warfare, defense, birth control, or chemistry. He knew these were things free people must know in order to protect, preserve, and advance themselves. We have not been able to protect, preserve, and advance ourselves. This shows the slave master has been very successful in dominating us with an education beneficial to him. There is a saying among us, mother may have, father may have, but God blesses the child who has its own. It is time we had our own. I want an education for my people that will let them exercise the right of freedom. We are 100 years up from slavery. We are constantly told that we are free. Why can't we take advantage of that freedom? I want an education for my people that will elevate them. Why should we always be lying at the gate begging for bread, shelter, clothing, and jobs if we are free and educated? Do not get an education just to set it up as some useless symbolic monument to the black man in the Western Hemisphere. We need an education that eliminates division among us. Acquire an education that creates unity and makes us desire to be with our own. The acquiring of knowledge for our children and ourselves must not be limited to the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. It should instead include the history of the black nation, the knowledge of civilization, of man and the universe, and all the sciences. It will make us a greater people of tomorrow. We must instill within our people the desire to learn and then use that learning for itself. We must be obsessed with getting the type of education we may use toward the elevation and benefit of our people. When we have such people among us, we must make it possible for them to acquire this wealth, which will be beneficial and useful to us. One of the attributes of Allah, the all-wise God, who is the supreme being, is knowledge. Knowledge is the result of learning and is a force or energy that makes its bearer accomplish or overcome obstacles, barriers, and resistance. In fact, God means possessor of power and force. The education my people need is that knowledge, the attribute of God, which creates power to accomplish and make progress in the good things or the righteous things. We have tried other means and ways, and we have failed. Why not try Islam? It is our only salvation. It is the religion of Allah, His prophets, and our forefathers. Knowledge of yourself. You are ever making mistakes which will prove fatal to you and others of your own. If you could only recognize the time and knowledge of yourself and kind, the knowledge of the others who are on the same planet rotating around the sun daily, you would know who you are. And you should know who you are as well as know your planet and its consistency, and remember at all times how you were brought here through our parents 400 years ago, and how our parents were mercilessly brought here against their will. They did not ask to come, but were forced, and were used for merchandise to be sold and resold for 300 long years like livestock and wild beasts. You do not have a second thought about this, because you have your mind, eyes, and heart filled with hopes that you may become one of those who did this evil against your parents and be recognized as a great admirer and lover of these same people who now rehearse the same evil with a little addition: the fire hose and the dogs, the burning and the lynching of you and your women. You are not able at this day and time, 100 years of free slave, to protect yourself and your women from the murderous hands of the children of the murderers of your fathers and mothers 400 years ago. Today, God, in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, is asking you and me to accept our own and return to our own kind on some of this earth that we can call our own. And you are rejecting this offer to return to your own unless you can carry the same enemy along who has destroyed your fathers and is now destroying you. They were not bought and sold as you were. They did not come from Africa, but from Europe. You are so blinded that you cannot see them, and so deaf that you cannot hear the truth of them, and desire to be one of them and mix into their blood and have them mix into your blood. This is like Sodom and Gomorrah before God. You should remember that you have a great offer made to you in the words, "Accept your own." To accept your own means yourself and your kind, your God, who is of you and you are of him. It was your fathers who created the heavens and the earth, while there is nothing that the white man has created independently. He did not even create himself. The black nation is self-created, while the white race is made by one of the gods and scientists of the black nation. Their time on our planet is nothing compared to the time that we have been in the universe on this planet. It is hardly a fraction of a minute. If we divide their 6,000 years into our billions and trillions of years, it would run into little or no time at all. We are the originals, so Almighty God Allah has revealed. He has asked you, who belong to the original people of the earth, to accept your place among them, since you have been robbed of knowledge and your place on this planet that you can call your own, and your place among your own. You must remember that this is a wonderful offer, and it is a wonderful knowledge to know the truth. And it is even more wonderful to know that the truth is in your favor, and the earth as well as the heavens above belong to you. Accept your own, that which you have been dead to the knowledge of, now that God has come in your midst to resurrect you and put you in your place of authority. You are ignorant enough to put yourself in the place of a dog at the feet of the white race, begging them to accept you as their brother, when they could not do this if they tried. They would still be deceiving you, and their efforts would end in the manifest truth that it was only false of them to try to establish brotherhood among you. Their time of ruling the people of earth is up. Accept your place in the sun, as it was originally before the creation of this world. You must remember that slave names will keep you a slave in the eyes of the civilized world today. You have seen and recently that Africa and Asia will not honor you or give you any respect as long as you are called by the white man's name. The example was evident when I took Muhammad Ali, the world's heavyweight champion, out of the white man's name. The name itself made him a servant and a slave to the white man. All Africa and Asia then acclaimed him as also being their champion. This shows you that all previous black men of America who were bestowed with the title of the world's heavyweight champion were only exalting the white man of America, Europe, and Australia. Their people said nothing because they were not theirs and were not enhancing their honor among the people of the world. Just a change of name has given Brother Muhammad Ali a name of honor and a name of praise that will live forever, its meaning. His people of the near and far east acclaimed him and laid the red carpet for him to come among them as a prince. I warn you to wake up and accept your own, or go to the doom with other than your own. If the civilized man fails to perform his duty, what must be done? The duty of the civilized man is to teach civilization to the uncivilized, the arts and sciences of civilized people and countries of advanced civilization. A divine messenger of God, Allah, raised among his people with the divine message, is held responsible for its delivery. His message teaches spiritual civilization, which is important to the success of a nation and society. According to history, the people who refuse to accept divine guidance or his message sent by his messengers are classified as uncivilized or savages. A well-educated, cultured, and courteous people make a beautiful society when it is spiritual. Good manners come from the civilized man who does not fail to perform his duty. There are several civilizations. We have a wicked one and a righteous one. It is a righteous civilization that is in the workings now. We all have been well trained into the wicked civilization. Now we must be trained into the knowledge of the righteous one. We must have a righteous, trained, civilized man who will not fail to perform his duty to us in guiding and teaching us. My people in America are under the searchlight of the righteous, who are offering to them the right guidance to a supreme civilization of righteousness never witnessed before on earth. The white race has failed to perform its duty of civilizing the American so-called Negroes. Of course, they have been their slaves for many centuries, and the slave masters have rights over them as long as they are slaves. However, if the slave masters free their slaves, not in words but in deeds, the slave masters should provide the once slaves with the right civilization and with everything necessary for them to start an independent life as their slave masters have. Certainly the so-called Negroes are being schooled, but is this education the equal of that of their slave masters? No. The so-called Negroes are still begging for equal education. After blinding them to the knowledge of self and their own kind for 400 years, the slave masters refused to civilize the so-called Negroes into the knowledge of themselves of which they were robbed. The slave masters also persecute and hinder anyone who tries to perform this most rightful duty. I will continue to say that as long as the so-called Negroes do not know who they really are and do not have the knowledge to free themselves from their slave masters' names and religion, they cannot be considered free or civilized. To this, their slave masters will agree. Some of the so-called Negroes are ignorant of this important advantage of having their own nation's names. They think there is nothing to a name, and there is not to the ones they are using, but the Bible says, a good name is better than gold. To continue to bear the slave masters' names makes my people the property of their slave masters or their children, and we can never hope to receive equal recognition in the civilized world. Will a free people accept slaves as their equal? The so-called Negroes must be truly civilized, and the right civilized man has not performed his duty until this is accomplished. However, the so-called Negro is free to receive his or her own if they just will not allow fear and ignorance to stand in their way. It has been seen from the little chance they have had to get a little education, they have shown and proved that they are the original people who are only asleep and in great need of the right civilized man who will perform his duty of awakening them. The so-called Negro's fear of being deprived of food, clothing, and shelter, and also the usual smile of the white slave master's children, prevents them from seeking the true knowledge of their own nation's civilization. They must drop the slave master's names and religion, which both they have and do not understand. This means nothing but slavery. Of course, some preachers and politicians who live off the ignorance of their people are opposed to the right civilization of our people. You must know that you have not been rightly civilized. No one can enslave another who has equal education, knowledge. My people lack science of the right kind. Allah is here to give you and me a superior knowledge of things and a country to ourselves. Separation of the so-called Negroes from their slave masters' children is a must. It is the only solution to our problem. It was the only solution according to the Bible for Israel and the Egyptians, and it will prove to be the only solution for America and her slaves, whom she mockingly calls her citizens, without granting citizenship. We must keep this in our minds at all times. We are actually being mocked. I think it is a disgrace to us for ever being satisfied with only a servant's part. Should not we, as a people, want for ourselves what other civilized nations have? It takes a true friend or friends to help another or others to enjoy equal freedom, justice, and equality. Today, for the first time in our history, we have that true friend in Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad and the nation of Islam, if we only would submit and accept him. It is written, Revelation 14:1, that 144,000 of us will accept and return to our God and people, and the rest of my people will go down with the enemies of Allah. For this sad prophecy of the loss of my people, I write what I am writing, hoping perhaps that you may be able to beat the old prophet's predictions by making the truth so simple that a fool can understand it. You must be rightly civilized. You must go back to your own people and country, but not one of you can return with what you have. You must know that this is the time of our separation and the judgment of this world, the Caucasian race, that you and I have known. Therefore, Allah has said to me that the time is ripe for you and me to accept our own, the whole planet Earth. What are you waiting for? The destruction? Come, let us reason together. But you cannot until you have a thorough knowledge of self. Who are you waiting for to teach you the knowledge of self? Surely not your slave masters who blinded you to the knowledge. The white race's civilization will never work for us. Accept your own. America has been number one on the list of God for total destruction for a long time, even in the prophecy of Moses, Isaac, Habakkuk, and Jesus. Her, America, destruction has been coming gradually for the past 34 years. The nations of the earth are becoming her enemies because of her evil and the murderers of the so-called American Negroes, who now could choose to build the kingdom of heaven. There is no let-up in her evil, brutality, and murder of her once slaves, the Negro, who are still her slaves mentally. She would not like you to know that the doom is because of the way she treated her slaves. She has deceived everyone who deals with her, as recorded in the revelations of John of the Bible. Today, she has, as the revelation of John prophesied, the head of the church, the Pope of Rome, helping her deceive Negroes and keep them in the church so that they may be destroyed with her. The only thing that will hold the Negro is his belief in whites as a people of divinity. They hold to his religion, Christianity, which they use to deceive everyone they possibly can. It was through Christianity that they got their authority over the black, brown, yellow, and red races. The holding to the white man's name is another chain that carries the Negro down with his enemies. It is laughable and saddening to see the so-called Negro preachers reading and preaching from the Bible while they do not understand it. Negro professionals, scholars, and scientists are still ignorant of the fact that as long as they are in the white man's name, they are his slaves. In every nation, as soon as he presents himself in the name of the white man of America or Europe, they know that he is dumb to the fact that he cannot be free until he breaks his slave master's hold on him, his name, his religion, his way of living, and his evil practices. These must be given up before any nation or even God can help or even aid the Negro in becoming a free people recognized by other nations. Proof has been offered in the name of the present heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali. It is a divine name. Both Muhammad and Ali are the names of God. Quickly the nations of his kind held out their hands and called to him. Christian black preachers have never been so recognized because of their ignorance in holding the name and religion of their slave master. The revelation of John in the Bible, the revelator represents them spiritually as beasts because of their savage way of dealing with and murdering black people. And even Isaiah warned you who hold to the white man's name and his religion.
This is your America. We have proven this to you, not your slave master, that you will get respect and honor throughout the world if you accept your own and take on the names of the divine supreme being. It is in your Bible, and now it has been made manifest to you. Watch how anxious the white man is to hold you and call you by his name. He still would like to call the champion Cassius Clay after himself, and he would like to call me Poole after himself. This is to keep the blind blind, the deaf deaf, and the dumb dumb to the knowledge that even the name alone is sufficient to free you of this evil people. I have offered America a solution to her problems with her slaves, but because she knows that you are dumb enough not to want to accept it, she is condemning herself to an early doom by rejecting it. The only way out is to separate the two people despite the foolish Negroes' cry that they love white people and want to remain with them. The time has arrived. The only way to put off for a few more years the total destruction of America is to deal fairly with the Negro. But, nevertheless, one day it will come, unless she would like to return to Europe instead of sending the Negro back to Africa. The whole Western Hemisphere belongs to the darker people, and Europe was given to the white people. Your anger against the Negro getting a just deal has hastened your doom. America will suffer some of the worst calamities within the next year or two, calamities worse than any nation has endured since man has been on earth. That is, if she does not make the right move. Square up with justice for the slave, and do not try to deceive him through intermarrying your women. Give him up and let him go, or suffer death and destruction. We must teach our own. Today, with all of our white, civilized schooling, we have not been taught of our own.
They will never teach us of our own. Since the coming of Allah, their reason for not teaching us of our own is made crystal clear. The knowledge that Allah has given us gives the knowledge of our own. Being the first people of the earth, we are destined to be the last. We are the creators and the makers. This limited civilization of the white man and his rule is now terminating, never to be brought into existence again. This makes it absolutely against the will of the white man to honor and respect you and me and our nation as being the first people and the makers of the universe. Why so much teaching and warning given to the American so-called Negro and so little or no teaching of the kind being given to the African and Asian black nation? It is due to the fact that we are living in the midst of a people whom Allah God will destroy in the very near future. We are on the brink of fire and must be removed to a zone of safety. The ignoring of such warnings and of the time of the judgment of this world, the Caucasian world, with their great universal power that they have exercised over the black nation, makes it very hard for the average black person to conceive of the idea of such a strong race of people being removed. This is a very small thing in the eyes and power of Allah, removing and destroying people who have brought his anger against them for their neglect of worship and respect of him as the supreme being, who do not even respect his representatives but prosecute and kill them. These people have been the worst people to us, the black nation, since they have been on the face of the earth. They were created and made for just the purpose of destroying our peace as well as our lives. They have destroyed 600 million of the black nations since they have been on our planet. This averages 100 million every 1,000 years of their rule. They have affected 9/10 of the total population of the black man under their rule, including the brown, red, and yellow races. They have deceived, as the Bible, Revelation of John says, the whole world, and now they are being made manifest as the deceivers and adversaries of Allah and his true religion of entire submission to his will, Islam. This black people of America who have been swallowed symbolically by the white slave master and his children must now be brought out of this race of people and be taught the knowledge of their own. Allah is holding the affair in person under the name of Master Farad Muhammad. He has chosen us today to be his people and means to take us and build and establish forever a people of righteousness and a people with unlimited knowledge of the divine supreme being. The very last of one of these will become greater than the greatest of this world. The Orthodox Muslims will have to bow to the choice of Allah. Allah will bring about a new Islam. As for the principles of belief, they remain the same. There will be no more signs to be watched for the coming of God and the setting up of a new world of Islam. We are seeing this change now and entering into it. The devils oppose this change, and the Orthodox join them in opposing us because of their desire to carry on the old way of Islam. Allah will place those of his choice in authority in the making of the new world, and others must obey whomever he puts in authority or find themselves fighting against the power of whomever they hold to be on their side and in their favor. We must have a new world. We accept for a new nation completely. As Yaqub brought about a people, the present white race, who were a completely new people made out of the original of us, another new people must be made to be the ruling voice of tomorrow out of this old world that is now living her last days. They will be completely new people. The Holy Qur'an and Bible refer to them as being brought about by the power and will of God in person in the resurrection of the mentally dead, lost-found original people in America. We may not seem to please you or to be pleasing to Allah, but it is written in the Bible that he will give to whom he pleases and chastise whom he pleases. This is to warn us that we have no choice in the matter. Whatever Allah desires, he will bring into being, whether we like it or not. Black man, accept your own. God said, accept your own. It is an act of intelligence and love for us to accept our own. One will say, what is our own? Number one, our own people, our own earth, God and his religion, Islam, the religion of peace, in our own place in the sun. This divine call to us to accept our own makes sense. Everything of life will accept its kind as its own. Why the so-called Negroes, members of the great Asiatic nation of the tribe of Shabazz, refuses to accept his own is because of being made blind, deaf, and dumb to the knowledge of self and kind by the devils when they were babies under slavery. Today, they cling to this same enemy of their fathers and the enemies of all black people upon the face of the earth because they cannot see any hope for a future for themselves in their own kind and self due to the lack of knowledge of self. They beg the enemy even for friendship, which is like the frog pleading to the snake not to swallow him after the snake has gotten him in his mouth. The black people of America have been swallowed by the slave masters who are a race of devils, says all-wise God Allah, and now refuse to let us go free without hindrance and hold us a prey against the will of Allah in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, who now seeks our deliverance, since our people love the enemy more than God.
For God to fulfill his promises to deliver us from our enemies, he must go to war against the enemy and break the enemy's power of resistance to free us.
War is inevitable. The so-called Negroes must come to the knowledge of truth, that they have no future in their enemies who are the enemies of Almighty God Allah. God must come to put an end to war, and that is to say, destroy those who love to make war and delight in making mischief. The American white people delight in mistreating us, their former slaves. There is no justice for us among such people, the devils in person. They hate us if we try being good. They have turned upon us who have turned to Allah and have accepted his true religion, Islam, and are persecuting and killing some of us just because we are Muslims, and they fear the teachings of Islam and the history and knowledge of the devils, and that all of our people will believe in Allah and his true religion, Islam.
They hate unity among the so-called Negroes. A continued war is made upon us by the white devils of America. Why shouldn't we accept our own and return to our own? There is no future in this people for us. They have hundreds and thousands of my followers in jails and state and government penitentiaries, and are falsely accusing many more and putting them under unjust, heavy penalties and long terms of imprisonment just because they want to be Muslims. The refusal of the Supreme Court to hear the unjust judges' decisions against my followers, the Muslims, in Louisiana, and the killing and the wicked, unjust plan that the Los Angeles court seeks to place against the poor, innocent Muslims that Allah saved from the police guns last April 27, 1962, is enough for the unintelligent animal world to shudder and weep. Shouldn't Allah destroy such an unjust people as our slave masters' children? The day of visitation has come. She shall reap what she has sown. Who is the original man?
The above question is now answered from the mouth of Allah to us, the so-called Negroes, for the first time since our straying away from our own nation. This secret of who is God and who is the devil has been a mystery to the average one of mankind, to be revealed in all of its clearness to one who was so ignorant that he know not even himself, born blind, deaf, and dumb in the wilderness of North America. All praise is due to the great Mahdi, who was to come and has come, the sole master of the world. I ask myself at times, what can I do to repay Allah, the great Mahdi, Farad Muhammad, for his coming, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? Most of us, having been born in the southern part of this wilderness of sin, where the member of white race, man of sin, has always manifested himself to us, the so-called Negroes, should have known that he was really the evil one by the way he treated us. Yet we were made so dumb that we still could not recognize him. The truth of him is now being told and taught throughout the world to his anger and sorrow. He is losing no time trying to hinder the truth of the above question, who is the original man? He is setting watchers and listeners around me and my followers to see if he can find some other charge to put against us, to satisfy his anger of the truth that we preach from the mouth of Allah, who is with us in person. The original man Allah has declared is none other than the black man. The black man is the first and last, maker and owner of the universe. From him came all brown, yellow, red, and white people. By using a special method of birth control law, the black man was able to produce the white race. The true knowledge of the black and white mankind should be enough to awaken the so-called Negroes and put them on their feet and on the road to self-independence. Yet, they are so afraid of the slave masters that they even love them to their destruction and wish that the bearer of truth would not tell the truth even if he knows it. The time has arrived when it must be told the world over. There are millions who do not know who is the original man. Why should this question be put before the world today? Because it is the time of judgment between the black and white and the knowledge of the rightful owners of the earth. Allah is now pointing out to the nations of earth their rightful places, and this judgment will bring an end to war over it. Now, it is so easy to recognize the original man, the real owner of the earth, by the history of the two, black and white. We have an unending past history of the black nation and a limited one of the white race. We find that history teaches that the earth was populated by the black nation ever since it was created, but the history of the white race does not take us beyond 6,000 years. Everywhere the white race has gone on our planet, they have either found the original man or a sign that he had been there previously. Allah is proving to the world of black men that the white race actually does not own any part of our planet. The Bible and Holy Quran bears witness to the above if you are able to understand it. The Holy Quran, the beauty of scriptures, repeatedly challenges the white race to point out the part of the heavens and earth that they created. It further teaches that they are not even their own creators. Created white man from a small life germ. The soft pronoun we, used nearly throughout the Holy Quran, makes the knowledge of the original man much clearer and more intelligent of how the white race's creation took place. In the Bible, referring to their creation, we have us, Genesis 1:26, creating, or rather making the race. The us and we used show beyond the shadow of a doubt that they came from another people. A knowledge of the white race removes once and for all times the mistakes that would be made in dealing with them. My followers and I can and are getting along with them in a more understandable way than ever because we know them. You cannot blame one for the way he or she was born, for they had nothing to do with that. Can we say to them, why don't you do righteousness when nature did not give righteousness to them? Or say to them, why are you such a wicked devil? Who is responsible, the maid or his maker? Yet we are not excused for following and practicing his evil or accepting him for a righteous guide just because he is not his maker. A good name is better than gold. One of the first and most important truths that must be established in this day is our identity. This is what our God, whose proper name is Allah, is guiding me to point out to you, my people, who are members of the lost and found nation in North America. You, my people, who have been robbed of your complete identity for over 400 years. Is it not time for you to know who you are after 400 years of submission to the white slave masters of America and their false religion of Christianity? Our true God is not like the spook God of Christianity, who demands death for our salvation and redemption.
He is offering us freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness on this earth while we live. First, you must be given the names of your forefathers, whose names are the most holy and righteous names of Allah. Again, I repeat, that restoring to you your identity is one of the first and most important truths to be established by God himself. All nations of the earth are recognized by the name by which they are called. By stating one's name, one is able to associate an entire order of a particular civilization simply by name alone.
For example, if you take the name Lu Chen, we know immediately that this is a Chinese name, whose land or origin is China, a country that operates on an independent basis and is recognized through the world as a nation and whose people demand respect. We know this and more from the name Lu Chen. If we search among the peoples and nations of the earth, we will discover that this is an established truth from country to country and from continent to continent. It is only when we come to America and learn the names that our people are now going by that we discover that a whole nation of 20 million black people are going by the names of white people. How can a so-called Negro say that his name is Sam Jones, a white man's name with roots in Europe, when Sam Jones, black man, comes from Africa or Asia? My poor, blind, deaf, and dumb people are going by the wrong names, and until you accept the truth of your true identity and accept the names of your people and nation, we will never be respected because of this alone. This is one of the reasons Almighty Allah has come among us, that is, to give us His names, the most holy and righteous names of the planet Earth. It is Allah who gave me my name, Muhammad. From this name alone, our open enemies, the white race, know that the true and living God has come into our midst and is doing a divine work among the so-called Negroes of America. The white man knows that Islam was our religion, our civilization, and our way of life before he made us blind, deaf, and dumb to this knowledge. It has never been the white man's intention to restore to us this knowledge. Now that he sees his formerly dead ex-slaves returning to their own religion, Islam, and worshiping their own God, Allah, and awakening to the truth of their true identity, he knows that God alone is bringing this change about. The white race knows and admits that it is only a matter of time when all the truth will be accepted by our people to his deepest regret. I warn you, my people, discard your former slave masters' names and be willing and ready to accept one of Allah's pure and righteous names that he alone will give our people from his own mouth. A good name is, indeed, better than gold. I am naught but a warner and a messenger to you, my people, not self-sent, but sent directly from Almighty God Allah. Help self. What must be done with the Negroes? Since our being brought in chains to the shores of America, our brain power, labor, skills, talent, and wealth have been taken, given, and spent toward building and adding to the civilization of another people. It is time for you and me, the so-called Negroes, to start doing for ourselves. We must not let our children be as are we, beggars of another man for his home, facilities, clothing, food, and the means of providing a living. Man depends on land for the necessities, food, clothing, and shelter for survival. A prime requisite for freedom and independence is having one's own land. There can be no freedom without a people having their own land. The acquisition of land has been the factor for more wars than any other cause. Economists agree that in order for any type of nation or system, capitalism or communism, democracy or totalitarian, or what have you, to exist and have a degree of independence, there must be ownership of land. The so-called Negroes are without a state they can call their own. We have nothing to show for our more than 310 years of forced slave labor and more than 100 years of our free servitude to our slave masters' children. We were brought here to work. We have worked. We are still the workers. Some of us say, what will we do if we do not work for the white man? How will we live? I say, when you are free and independent, you have a job. You have a tremendous task of doing something for self. You have the job of building a civilization for yourself as other free and independent people are doing for themselves. As a people, we must become producers and not remain consumers and employees. We must be able to extract raw material from the earth and manufacture them into something useful for ourselves. This would create jobs in production. We must remember that without land, there is no production. The surplus of what we produce, we would sell. This would develop a field of commerce and trade as other free and independent people whose population is less than that of 20 million so-called Negroes who are dependent in America. We must begin at the cradle and teach our babies that they must do something for self. They must not be like we, their fathers, who look to the slave makers and slave masters' children for all. We must teach our children now with an enthusiasm exceeding that which our slave masters used in having our forefathers embed the seed of dependency within us. We must stop the process of giving our brain power, labor, and wealth to our slave masters' children. We must eliminate the master-slave relationship. We must educate ourselves and our children into the rich power of knowledge which has elevated every people who have sought and used it. We must give the benefit of our knowledge to the elevation of our own people. Presently in this country, in almost all of the major universities and colleges, there are thousands of young students from Africa and Asia. Yet, as young, primitive, and backward as we say these countries of Africa and Asia might be, their students here are returning to their shores.
Their intent and purpose is to give their people the benefit of their learning. All civilized people give the benefit of their knowledge, skill, and wealth to their own people.
Those who do not are called traitors, defectors, spies, tools, and toms. Why should we spend 12 and 16 years seeking an education only to give the benefit of our knowledge back to the one we sought it from? It is time for us to wake up. Why should we work to give the meager earnings of our labor back to our slave masters' children? Why can't we have our own? Why can't we do for our own? Why can't we learn to spend with and support our own? Why can't we strive toward keeping our brain power, labor, and wealth within and among and elevating our own?
We must have that which will make us want to do for ourselves as other people want and do for themselves. You ask, how can this be done? The so-called Negroes must be taught and given Islam. Why Islam? Islam because it teaches first the knowledge of self. It gives us the knowledge of our own. Then and only then are we able to understand that which surrounds us. Know thyself is the doctrine Socrates espoused, and this is the base of the educational system in America.
The religion of Islam makes the so-called Negroes think in terms of self and their own kind. Thus, this kind of thinking produces an industrious people who are self-independent. Islam is actually our religion by nature. Allah is the proper name of God. Islam is not a European organized white man's religion. It is time for the so-called Negroes to help their own kind and be benefited by Islam. The black woman. The woman is man's field to produce his nation. If he does not keep the enemy out of his nation, he won't produce a good nation. If we love our vegetable crops, we will go out and turn up the leaves on that vegetable stalk and look carefully for worms that are eating and destroying the vegetables.
We will kill that worm, right? Again, we will go out into the cotton field and look for the enemies of our cotton and try to kill that enemy. We study poisons and chemicals of the earth, and we pour these chemicals on the enemies of our crops to keep the enemies from destroying them. We love a crop that we can produce every year, every season, so well that we will kill every enemy that we find seeking to destroy it. We will even kill one another if we find the other one out there trying to steal that crop. Is not your woman more valuable than that crop of corn, that crop of cotton, that crop of cabbage, potatoes, beans, tomatoes? How much more valuable is your woman than these crops that you should keep the enemies from destroying the crops? Yet you are not careful about your women. You don't love them. Why? It is because you have allowed visitors to run in and out of your house. Thus they have destroyed your love for your woman, and your woman has not the love for you that she should. That is a good sign. Until we learn to love and protect our woman, we will never be a fit and recognized people on the earth. The white people here among you will never recognize you until you protect your woman. The brown man will never recognize you until you protect your woman. The yellow man will never recognize you until you protect your woman. The white man will never recognize you until you protect your woman.
You and I may go to Harvard. We may go to York of England, or go to El Azhar in Cairo, and get degrees from all of these great seats of learning. But we will never be recognized until we recognize our women.
On visiting with a couple of my sons in what they call the Near East in 1959, I began in Turkey. We traveled from Turkey down to Africa, to Ethiopia, and the Sudan. We visited Arabia, Mecca and Medina, and we visited Pakistan. We returned home from Lahore, Pakistan on about the 6th of January, 1960. We didn't even find on that entire tour such a thing as not recognizing the black woman. Everywhere we went, the black man recognized his woman. He had great respect for her. We dined in many of the top, as you say in slang, homes. We dined with some of the most influential people of these countries, government people. In some of their homes, we never did see any of their family, only men. The waiter was a man or boy, not any woman. My beloved brothers in America, you have lost the respect for your woman, and therefore you have lost the respect for yourself. You won't protect her, therefore you can't protect yourself. She is your first nurse. She is your teacher. Your first lesson comes from your mother. If you don't protect your mother, how do you think you look in the eyes of other fellow human beings? Protect and elevate your woman. Allah himself has said that we cannot return to our land until we have a thorough knowledge of our own selves. This first step is the control and the protection of our own women. There is no nation on earth that has less respect for and as little control of their woman as we so-called Negroes here in America. Even animals and beasts, the fowls of the air, have more love and respect for their females than have the so-called Negroes of America. Our women are allowed to walk or ride the streets all night long with any strange men they desire. They are allowed to frequent any tavern or dance hall that they like, whenever they like. They are allowed to fill our homes with children other than our own, children that are often fathered by the very devil himself. Then, when the devil man decides to marry her, the so-called Negro press and magazines will make it front-page news. The daily press will not print a so-called Negro man marrying into their race, but you seem to think it is an honor to your own nation when your daughter goes over to your enemies, the devils. Our women have been and are still being used by the devil white race ever since we were first brought here to these states as slaves. They cannot go without being winked at, whistled at, yelled at, slapped, patted, kicked, and driven around in the streets by your devil enemies right under your nose. Yet you do nothing about it, nor do you even protest. You cannot control or protect your women as long as you are in the white race's false religion called Christianity. This religion of theirs gives you no desire or power to resist them. The only way in place to solve this problem is in the religion of Islam. It is a pleasure to Allah to defend us from our enemies. In the religion of Christianity, the white race has had us worshiping and praying to something that actually did not even exist. Islam would not only elevate your women,